The following information and opinions expressed on the Sweet Divorce podcast do not constitute nor are intended to be taken as legal advice. All content is generalized and for informational purposes only. Please contact our legal team or your own attorney for advice specific to your particular case. Thank you. It's Sweet Divorce. Life's sweeter after divorce. Let us help you get there.
Hello, I am Rosario Burgos Santoyo, and this is my partner,
Gretel Smith.
Today, we are joined by our associates in Illinois, Dina Miners and Krista Jones-May, and we're going to be talking about divorce and the military in Illinois specifically. Hello, ladies. How are you today?
We're here. We're hanging in.
Yes, we are. So, off the top of your head, can you think of anything that is specific to Illinois that would have a military family be treated differently, or something else that they should consider differently as a result of being in the military and going through a divorce or family law matter?
I think the key thing to remember is how Illinois law specifically will play into potential child support, maintenance, some people know as spousal support or alimony. You know, there are things such as military disability. Illinois can't withhold those funds, right? That is, you know, the veterans' right. But keep in mind that amount that they receive can and will be included in calculating income for support purposes. So even though something, you know, the big question is always, I was told no one can touch that, you know, that's mine and mine alone. That's for me. That's for, you know, the disability I received as part of my service. And while technically it is correct that we can't withhold from those, you know, funds, they can still be used to calculate support. So that will be a factor, as well as things like basic housing allowance. If there's hazard pay, if you're overseas, all of those sources of money will be used to calculate support in Illinois.
So if you were a military member preparing for a divorce in Illinois, what are some things that you would advise that person to do to prepare for divorce?
I think first they need to see where they are in their career. Are they looking to retire soon? You know, are they wanting to move back home before filing? Are they here just temporarily? Is it one where they're going to be up to be moved soon? Is their spouse intending on staying in Illinois? Is their family from Illinois? Have they, you know, established themselves here? I think it's important to be aware of where you are in your military career, what it might look like going forward, especially if you have minor children, if you will be going to a different base, if you may be going overseas, so that you can start thinking about what that's going to look like, especially as far as parenting time with children.
So you mentioned knowing, you know, where you might be stationed. If a military member knows that he or she is going to be deployed or sent to a different state and they're not originally from Illinois, what sort of things should that person consider, and what can they prepare as well?
So typically, if some of this is governed a little bit by a uniform act referring to different home states as it relates to the children. So if the parents and the child have been in a specific jurisdiction for 6 months, that is going to be considered the home state of the child for purposes of granting the court jurisdiction. What people should consider, though, is whether they have a need for personal support purposes, family support purposes, where they would need to move elsewhere with the child. And that would go for the service member or a spouse. Sometimes, if a service member is in the process of potentially being stationed in another place, oftentimes we hear that the spouses may want to reside someplace where they have better family connections too. So really, you have to consider what your family needs are when you're looking into anything parenting time related when you're looking into getting a divorce here in Illinois.
So you need to consider, like, if you're in Illinois because of your military service, consider how the parenting time would be affected by you not being present in Illinois. For example, if the other parent is from somewhere else, possibly consider that your children might have more support going to where the other person is from or where you might be originally from. Is that what you're alluding to, or am I
Yes, I think
overgeneralizing?
no, I think that that's spot on. In Illinois, we do have a, a law that allows for the relocation of a child. So if there's not some significant, what's the word I'm thinking of? Ties to the community, then sometimes that's a way that people can find themselves stationed from a specific location, but then kids get to move with the other parent to some other location because they don't have family support in the area.
So, and just bouncing off that, I think one example where that really comes into play is, say the service member is going to be assigned to California next, and mom doesn't want to stay in Illinois, or dad, whoever's the non-service member. If they don't want to stay in Illinois and want to relocate to their home state, well, then Illinois might have jurisdiction because that's where the kid is, that's where the parties are now. But long term, what is that going to mean for the child? Where are they going to go?
Right.
So specifically though, to military members, say that are in Illinois that are thinking of getting a divorce, is this something that you would want to, would you advise a person if they had just gotten stationed there, maybe, or they have 3 or 4 more years, would you advise that person to file in Illinois or wait? What is your
I think life is too short to be unhappy. I think it's too short to be unhappy for the parents, for the kids. You know, if you want to wait, you certainly can wait. But if you have jurisdiction in Illinois and you are ready to make that step, when you are ready, it is time to do it, because the sooner you rip the Band-Aid, the sooner it's over, right? And the sooner you could rebuild your life to the next stage. I think it's important to know your rights, you know, important to speak to an attorney to say, what would divorce look like in Illinois? Right. So you have that understanding, especially if there's a move coming up soon. But especially if you've been here about a year, you know you're going to be here for a couple more years. Illinois is where your home is. That's where you're stationed, that's where jurisdiction, and that's the law that's going to apply if you file at that time.
I would also say that there's a timing component to this, specifically as it relates to spousal support. So if you are a service member who is likely to have to pay spousal support, my advice is always going to be that you are going to want to file sooner rather than later, because that's going to lessen the duration of time that you have to pay spousal support to your spouse. It's a sore subject for many who have to pay that spousal support. So if you can file sooner and kind of initiate that cutoff deadline for when, for how long your spousal support may be ordered, that's going to benefit you. Some people, they want to delay for whatever reason, but then that's going to come back later on and they're not going to consider, okay, well, I wanted to file for divorce in 2020, but I didn't actually do it until 2024.
And that applies to military retirement too. The longer you're married and contributing to military retirement, the longer your spouse has a claim for their portion of that military retirement.
We're going to take a quick break. Sweet Divorce will be right back after these messages.
Need help with your divorce? Not to worry. Here at Burgo Santoyo Smith, we have the answers to all your questions pertaining to court orders, mediation, family law, and healthy co-parenting. Find us at www.bsslegal.com or give us a call at 833-931-1615. That's 833-931-1615. We are here to serve you with several locations in California, from San Diego, Escondido, El Centro, and Monterey, and one location in Swansea, Illinois. Burgo Santoyo Smith. Life's sweeter after divorce. Let us help you get there.
Want more Sweet Divorce? Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at BSS Legal.
So generally speaking, how long does a service member or a paying party have to pay for spousal support, since it sounds like there are specific deadlines, a specific amount of time that they are going to be required to do so?
Longer you're married, the longer the obligation. The key dates are there's usually a big bump at 5, 10, 15 years. After 20 years married, it's permanent. Now, it's
Okay.
permanent in the sense that you can still seek to modify, say, you reach Social Security retirement age, or, they get remarried. You can obviously seek to modify under that, but there are key dates that the maintenance obligation jumps up. So the longer you're married, the longer that duration is going to be. And it's gets more significant, especially after 10 years.
About for military spouses that would be in Illinois, what's some advice that you would give them to prepare for divorce, or resources that they could utilize in order to get prepared for a divorce from a military member?
I would say keep track of the information that is important to you. So, for example, if you have claims of domestic violence within your relationship, those are things that you are going to want to be able to provide some specific detail. If you are a homemaker and your spouse is the breadwinner, I mean, you're going to want to keep track of that as it relates mainly to like child related issues. Illinois is a no fault state, so they're not going to consider domestic violence for purposes of property division, but that's something that they could consider when they're awarding parenting time to each parent. So really just even something as simple as journaling, you could do that and then kind of use that to reference back to some of the issues that you were experiencing. But I think that keeping track of the information that you think is most important to you is going to be the start of really any case, but tends to be especially important in cases where there are service members involved.
Other things to keep in mind too, and talk to an attorney about what's specific, especially for your base, your area. If you live on base, service is a little bit different, right? Because the sheriff can't just rock up on base and serve paperwork. It's a little more complicated. You can absolutely divorce a serviceman that, even if they live on base, but there's just certain steps that have to be taken to follow through with that. Same thing, you have a right to live on base even if you're getting a divorce, right? Unless there's a court order asking you to move off base, you still have a right to those benefits. You still have a right to that health insurance during the divorce proceedings. Even if you decide, you want the divorce, you want to initiate it, you still maintain those rights.
Good to know.
Does every military divorce have to be contentious?
No.
So what are
No.
some options for military families that, they realize that they don't want to be married anymore and we need to go our separate ways, but we want to do this peacefully? What's an option for them?
There's always mediation. That's where the, two parties will sit down with a neutral third party, usually an attorney, but someone who's been received the training and been certified to become a mediator. That way you can talk through the issues. They don't decide for you. They just help facilitate the conversation so that you can make the decisions that make sense for your family. You can also speak to attorneys and try to do settlement negotiations, before filing. That way you can kind of make your arguments back and forth, figuring out what's out there, right? Because you want to make sure whenever you're negotiating, you know what's at stake. You know all the property. You know all the debts, that there's not a hidden account, or you don't know what the full extent of the military retirement is. You want to make sure you have all the information. But then an act of simply communicating and trying to work together to find a resolution.
You also mentioned military retirement and how it's divided. How is military disability treated?
So military disability will go to the disabled. However, it is included as income for the purposes of child support and maintenance calculation. So it will be added as income and tax-free income, right? So that's going to make those numbers higher. That's another thing people don't often consider, especially, housing allowance, disability, things like that. Not only is it income for support purposes, but because it's non-tax, it's treated as non-tax. The full amount is added to it. So that typically makes the numbers higher.
Thank you.
Very much. Very informative.
Any last words?
Military cases don't have to be, like you said, difficult. They can be amicable. Even if a military serviceman is deployed, they still have rights. They can be heard. They can still get parenting time for when they get back. They still have their right to property. So whether they're stationed in Illinois or elsewhere, they still have a right to what is equitable as property and debts. They still have a right to, their child or children, and the court will allow them to have their say to make sure that happens.
So I just thought of something since you mentioned people being deployed and how that can affect their rights for parenting. What happens if you do have custody of your child and you end up sent, overseas for 6 months? What happens to your parenting time at that point? Do you have to ease back into that custody time when you return, or is there something that can protect the service members to make sure that they don't lose time upon their return?
So unless something has been modified once they return, it's back to the old schedule. Some people, if you know that deployment is a possibility, will negotiate within the original, whether it's a parenting agreement or a divorce, something like that, a provision that maybe family gets to exercise some or all of their parenting time. Again, that's not a guarantee, but that's something that can be discussed. That, if they ever get a break, that they can come home and that will count as their parenting time. I've had a service member be deployed overseas and got to relocate with the children. So,
wow.
There are options. It just depends on the specific case circumstances.
Well, thank you. Now I think I really mean thank you. Thank you for your time. And thank you for your insight.
Thank you so much.
And if you or anybody you know that's in the military or a military spouse seeking legal advice regarding a divorce or child custody, please feel free to reach out to our office.
Have a great day.
Life is sweeter after divorce.
Let us help you get there.